A fist came out of nowhere, cracking across a young woman's cheek, and for a second the whole farmer's market went silent. Bags of fruit slipped from her hands, daisies scattered across the pavement, and blood touched the corner of her lip. The badge on the cop's chest gleamed in the Texas sun, but whatever authority he thought he carried, well, it shattered the moment he laid a hand on her. Phones came up, gasps rolled through the crowd, and in that hush she whispered words that would change everything. Call my dad, James Walker. Now people in that crowd didn't know what they just stepped into. They thought this was some local officer throwing his weight around. But the second that name left her mouth, the air shifted, because James wasn't just any dad. He was a man who'd spent half a lifetime on screens and in rings in real fights. In staged ones, a man people whispered about like he was part myth, part storm. And this storm had just been woken up. That morning had started as normal as they come. Rock Creek, a small town that looked like it hadn't changed in 50 years. Porches, cicadas, buzzing sunlight dripping gold across cracked sidewalks. James Walker had built a quiet life here, far from the noise of his old world. He'd traded red carpets for the sound of his daughter's laughter action scripts, for dog-eared books, fans screaming his name, for neighbors calling him sir at the diner. His daughter, her name was Lila, was 19, whip-smart kind, and stubborn enough that she'd argue with him over movie choices every Friday night. That morning, she jingled her car keys and leaned on the doorway. Market run, Dad. Need anything? He'd smiled that half smile only fathers manage. Don't forget the popcorn. It ain't movie night without it. She promised she'd be back before the first gunfight in the Western he had picked. He believed her, he always did. Lila's drive was short windows, down music, up, singing along off-key like she didn't care. At the market, she moved like she belonged because she did. The strawberry seller greeted her by name. The old baker reminded her to tell James he still remembered the time he'd fixed his roof after a storm. She picked daisies, bread apples, and finally tucked a bag of kettle corn on top, her dad's favorite. She was smiling when she closed the trunk of her car. Then his voice cut through the chatter like a knife. You got a permit to be hanging around here? She turned and saw him. Officer Riley Beckett, leaning against his cruiser with that smug half-smile. His hand rested too close to his belt, his eyes dripping with contempt. I'm sorry, what she asked, confused but polite. You heard me, he snapped. You've been lingering too long. What are you really doing? I'm shopping, she answered evenly, like everyone else. But he wasn't after truth. He was after control. You people think the rules don't apply, don't you? The words hit like poison, loud enough for folks to start turning their heads. Conversations died. Kids tugged their mother's sleeves. Lila squared her shoulders. I have every right to be here. He sneered, stepped closer, shadow covering her. Not with that attitude, you don't. Show me some ID. Her pulse quickened, but her voice didn't shake. Why? What have I done? Why are you resisting? His tone grew sharper. That's not a good idea. She held her ground. I'm not resisting. I just don't understand why you're singling me out. His lip curled. Because I don't like arrogance. And you've got it written all over your face, someone in the crowd whispered. This isn't right. Phones lifted higher. Lila slowly pulled her wallet, handed him her license. He snatched it like it offended him. Lila Walker, he said, loudly mocking the name. What you think, because of who your daddy is, you're untouchable. Her cheeks burned, half fury, half humiliation. I've done nothing wrong. You're harassing me. He leaned so close, she could smell the bitterness on his breath. You're going to learn real fast that mouth of yours doesn't fly here. Is this how you talk to every woman buying groceries? She shot back, voice sharp enough for the crowd to hear. And that was the crack. Phones everywhere recorded. Riley saw it. His eyes twitched, and instead of backing off, he doubled down. He snatched for her phone, ripped it from her hand, and smashed it against the asphalt. The screen shattered, the sound sharp as a gunshot. The crowd gasped. Lila staggered back, shock and rage mixing in her chest. You're out of control, she said. Watch your mouth, he barked, jabbing a finger toward her face. She lifted her chin. Touch me again and you'll regret it. Something in her defiance snapped him. His fist swung fast, knuckles cracking against her cheek. The sound carried across the lot, silencing every last whisper. Lila collapsed, groceries spilling, daisies tumbling. A woman screamed, a man shouted, "She's just a kid." Lila's vision blurred, blood stung her lip, but her spirit didn't break. She whispered to the bystander, still filming, "Call my dad." The man blinked. "Your dad," she swallowed. "James Walker." And just like that, the crowd understood they weren't just watching a young woman assaulted. They'd witnessed a fuse being lit. Back home, James was sipping coffee. A Western paused on the TV when his phone buzzed. He answered and a shaky voice said, "Sir, your daughter has been attacked. A cop hit her. Please come quick." The world around him froze. He didn't shout, didn't curse. He just set the phone down, stood and walked to the door like a man stepping into a fight he'd been preparing for his whole life. 10 minutes later, his truck rolled into the lot. The crowd parted. He didn't slam the door, didn't bark a word. He walked steady, eyes fixed on his daughter, sitting against the curb, holding her cheek, blood dried at the corner of her mouth. He knelt. "Lila, I'm okay," she whispered, and both of them knew it wasn't true. He dabbed gently at her lip with his sleeve, then rose to face the cop who had put that bruise on his child. Riley smirked, hands twitching near his belt. She was resisting what James asked, voice low, steady. "An officer of the law." She thought the rules didn't apply. "She bought groceries," James said flatly. The crowd murmured. Phones tilted closer. Riley puffed up, tried to laugh. "You want to lecture me? You're some washed-up action star. I enforce the law." James didn't blink. "I'm a father." That landed heavier than any punch. The crowd leaned forward. Riley stepped closer, chest out. "Back up before I put you on the ground." James studied him like a man reads tells at a poker table. The twitch at his mouth, the hitch in his shoulder. "Don't do something you can't take back." Riley's pride snapped. He swung wild. James shifted half a step, the punch cutting empty air. Gasps burst from the crowd. "Stop," James said, voice like thunder rolling in the distance. "You don't want this." But Riley wasn't listening. He yanked his baton free, raising it high. A vendor cried, "Don't do this!" The baton sliced downward, but James moved calm, precise, decades of training behind the smallest gesture. He caught the officer's wrist, redirected, locked it tight until the baton clattered to the ground. In one fluid motion, Riley was face down on the gravel, his arm, pin pain written all over him. "You assaulted my daughter," James said loud enough for the crowd to hear. "In front of witnesses. You struck her because you thought no one would stop you." "Well, I'm stopping you." The market erupted in cheers, voices shouting, "We saw it. It's on video." Kids clutched their parents tighter. People wept and applauded. Sirens screamed as more cruisers pulled up. Officers rushed out, weapons half drawn, then froze at the sight. Riley on the ground. James above him, phones recording from every angle. The senior officer's eyes hardened. "Officer Beckett, you're under arrest for assault and misconduct." Cheers drowned Riley's protests as cuffs snapped shut on his wrists. He shouted excuses, but nobody listened. The crowd had seen the truth. James gathered Lila in his arms. "You're safe now." She trembled, not from fear anymore, but from the adrenaline leaving her body. "He hit me like I was nothing," she whispered. James held her close. "No one hurts you and walks away. Not on my watch." News spread faster than wildfire. Videos went viral. Lila's bruised face became a symbol. People argued, rallied, demanded reform. And when the mayor called a town forum, Lila could have stayed home. But she stood. She walked into that hall with her bruise uncovered, her voice shaking only once. "My name is Lila Walker. I went to buy groceries. I was treated like a criminal. My phone was smashed, and I was punched in the face by a man who swore to protect. I'm not just someone's daughter. I'm a citizen, and no badge gives anyone the right to strip away my dignity. The chamber erupted applause so loud it rattled the walls. People rose from their seats, shouting her name, chanting for accountability. Reform was promised that night, oversight boards stricter, rules real transparency. But the image that lingered wasn't of politicians making speeches. It was of a 19-year-old girl standing tall with a bruise on her face and her father sitting quietly in the front row, proud, unshakable eyes glinting with the kind of fire you don't forget. Later back home, Lila leaned against him, tea steaming between them. "Was I enough?" she asked softly. James didn't hesitate. "You were exactly what the truth needed." The rain tapped outside, steady like an old clock keeping time. The town argued, the world debated, but in that living room, the only thing that mattered was a promise kept. "I'll be right here. I won't look away." And that's the story. A father, a daughter, a town forced to see what happens when someone abuses power in broad daylight. But here's the real question for you. What would you have done if you were standing in that crowd? Would you have filmed, shouted, stepped in, or would you have looked away? Drop your thoughts in the comments because justice only lives if we keep talking about it.